Vinay madam, let's get started. I hope time is 10 o'clock.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Hello everyone. A very good morning to all. Time and suffering are inseparable in life, but in physics, both are the common denominator of all experience. Myself, Veena Esleti, guest lecturer at CSB Arts, SMRP Science, and GLR Commerce College, Ramdur. A very warm welcome to all. It's a wonderful day, and I feel privileged to extend my warm welcome to all present here. Let us start the webinar by lighting the lamp virtually. Now I request our beloved principal, Dr. Srimati R.S. Gudganavar, to welcome and address the gathering.
Hello, good morning to all. I hope all are doing well. Today, in this morning, we all have gathered online for the national webinar organized by the Department of Physics under the leadership of Professor Shamesh in association with IQAC of our CSB Arts, SMRP Science, and GLR Commerce Degree College, Ramdur, District Belgavi of Karnataka. Our college is one of the prestigious colleges in North Karnataka and known for its educational achievements and records since 55 years. We have been organizing such many programs which add to the educational and cultural values and also in the way to quench the thirst for knowledge and research activities. At this juncture, it is my pleasure and privilege to welcome you all to this webinar. I hope we all know that in this 21st century, technological advancement and economic growth of a country are closely related to each other. We agree that the prosperity of a country depends on efficient production and improving living standards and satisfying basic needs of human beings. In this direction, today's webinar on the topic condensed matter physics and its frontiers is more relevant. Today, CMP is one of the most active and exciting research area in both basic sciences and also technological applications. Almost every aspect of our daily life is benefited from research in condensed matter physics. So there is a vast scope for CMP. We are very lucky and happy to have Dr. Rajiv Joshi as resource person in this webinar who is going to deliberate elaborately the different aspects of and also the uses of CMP from common man to the level of nation, that is both from micro and macro points of view. I, on behalf of our teaching, non-teaching staff and students of our college and also all the participants gathered far and wide the country online, extend a warm welcome to Dr. Rajiv Joshi. Welcome you, sir. I also heartily welcome all the participants of this webinar who are very curious to know and to listen to our research person and to know the science of condensed matter physics, which has greatest impact on our daily lives and which provides foundations for technological development. I am also happy to welcome Professor Shamesh, HOD of physics department, and who is assisting us continuously in the national webinar series since many days, and also his team, and along with these Professor S.M. Sakri, coordinator IQAC of our college, and also my students and colleagues to this webinar. With these words, I once again welcome you all and wish all the best for the dedicated efforts in organizing this webinar. Thank you all.
Thank you, madam. I would like to start today's event by inviting today's guest on this webinar. So now I request Professor Shamesh, Head Department of Physics and Organizing Secretary.
Good morning, one and all gathered here. I profusely would like to introduce our resource person, Dr. Raju Joshi, an assistant professor of physics at Central University of Karnataka, Kalburgi, has completed his master's degree from Karnataka University, Dharwad, and PhD from Shivaji University, Kolhapur, in the area of condensed matter physics in 2010. He was a postdoctoral fellow at Department of Physics, Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore from 2010 to 2013, and at Cambridge University, United Kingdom in 2014. His current areas of interest in research are device physics, spintronics, magnetotransport in complex, magnetic oxides and their multilayers, magnetoelectric coupling in solids, micromagnetic simulation of nanostructures, ion transport and energy technology. His other areas of interest are Indian classical music, literature, and theatre. With this brief introduction, I will conclude my introduction speech. Thank you, one and all.
Thank you, sir. Now, without further ado, we will turn the time over to resource person Dr. Raju Joshi, sir, Assistant Professor, School of Physical Science, Central University of Karnataka, Gulbarga. I kindly request to deliver the lecture, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Veena. At the outset, I would like to thank Professor Sham for this wonderful invitation. And it's been wonderful interacting with him. I have known him for quite some time, and he was our guest quite prior, a year and a half or so. We really cherished together the journey of discussing physics intensively. So thank you, Sham, for introducing me to your team here at Ramdurg. I thank the principal, madam. Madam, your introduction was very overwhelming, and I did realize that the college has been doing very significant in propagating education, science, and the values to the society. Thank you. Thanks indeed, madam, for the invitation. Further, without any much delay, I'll just try to go to my talk. I will be, let me just confess, as I learned from Sham, it's essentially, I need to cater to undergraduate students. That's what something which Sham did tell me. So I will try to be very, on ground. So that is my duty as I learn. Meanwhile, it is going to be an open forum, so I can receive any obstruction from any of you at any point of time. So please feel free to tap me at any point of time. Please, if you have anything which is not really convincing or not clear, please let me know. Okay, so I will be sharing my screen, and I'll be using this kind of a presentation tool for doing this talk. Let me just know whether you are seeing my screen or not. Is my screen visible to all?
Yeah.
And am I audible properly? Is my audio level fine? Is my screen visible?
Yes, sir, your screen is visible.
Okay, and is my audio level fine, or you want me to increase the audio level?
Just increase this audio level a little bit.
Is this decent now?
Okay, sir. It is fine.
Okay, okay. So 1 point rise, or is this perfect?
It is perfect, sir. It is perfect.
So
Now it
that's
is okay.
so that's wonderful. So I will be starting my talk. Just feel free to tap me at any point of time. It is 10:13 here. I was told by Sham that I can talk for 1 hour. Is that correct, Sham, or I need to regulate?
Yes, sir. 1 hour is sufficient. If any doubts are there, we can increase the times for discussion.
Fine. That's 10:13 in my watch here. So I will be ending by an hour exactly. So I'll try to do that. So wonderful. So I would need you to talk to me. Okay. So if you don't talk to me, then I will not talk to you. So that's the situation. So at the outset, I thank all the team for organizing this talk. Meanwhile, I suggest please be safe. This is a very tough time for the country as well as to the whole humanity. It is essential for us to be, patient and rather supportive to each other. So unless that collaborative effort comes in, we are not in a position to hold on to this strain. So I wish all of you a safe life. So let me begin. So it's a general talk. So I'm going to talk to you all on a very general grounds. It's just to kindle interest into you all. That's the basic idea, and it's just to provide students a bird's eye view of the field of condensed matter physics. So condensed matter physics is quite a vast subject, and I'll just try to pick few things here and there and rather oversimplify them and make sure that I communicate to you a better spirit. That's the whole aim. So you will see that there are at each point of time there will be a link given down below to the research papers which I am going to cite, or the ideas are taken from. So the links will be found immediately after the content. So that's what you are going to see. So to begin with, I will just try to introduce you all to the place where I come from. I come from Central University of Karnataka. So you will see that I am somewhere here. So I'm somewhere here. Okay. So this is Kalaburagi or Gulbarga, as you know, a very hot place, but rather for a specific reason, the Central University of Karnataka for the development of the Hyderabad Karnataka region was put here. And the aim of this university is to propagate research in the student community. So that's the basic aim. So along with research, we try to teach a curriculum on par with the other international agencies. So that's the aim of central universities. That's how these new 13 central universities were started, to propagate science research or research in general in pedagogy. So that's the aim. So you will find that this is the Google Map view, and V, that is Department of Physics, is housed somewhere here. Okay, so we are somewhere here, and we are a new department. Okay, hardly 10 years old department. So we have 4 people in the department. Dr. Bharat, he tries to, he's a condensed matter physicist again. He tries to look at biological systems. Okay, so biology, the major chunk of biology is an outcome of condensation, or rather bringing objects together. So that's his aim. He tries to look at biological systems and looks at the biomembranes. That's the work he does. And I have Deepak Samuel. He's the head and dean of the department today. He works in experimental particle physics and something called proton therapy, which is basically therapy for cancer. The next person is me. I work in device physics and spintronics. I have one more new colleague who has joined us a year prior. That is Dr. Suchasmita Sahu. She works in dark matter phenomenology and particle physics. She's basically a theory person, so theoretical physics she does. Whereas the other three people, we three are experimental physicists. Okay, so that's the idea. So if you want to join us, that is to join Central University of Karnataka, you are supposed to write an examination called CUCET. Hopefully by next month, by this month end, we will be announcing our entrance for this year, this academic year. So you write this examination and then you can join different departments of the Central University. And even if there are students who want to join undergraduate program, that is BSc, that also can be done so, but we take only 30 students across the country. So there is a kind of limited number entry. So please take care of these things. And I would request you, people who are interested in doing research or engaging into exploration. So this is some place which you can really choose, being in Karnataka. Okay, so with this, let me just start the small talk. Let us try to understand this. Can somebody tell me what are these things? So what is that you observe here? What is this? So anybody can speak up, okay? Otherwise, you can raise your hand also. What is this one?
It is looking like a gold, sir.
What is the next one? Wonderful.
Copper.
What is
Silver.
Oh, possibly. Great. What is this last one?
Wood. I think
Wood.
wood, sir.
Wonderful. Now, how did you identify that? What was the way we identified that?
So based on the color and texture.
Yes, that's wonderful. So we learn that there is change in color. So what I observe is this is golden in color. This is gold, that's why. And you have copper, you have silver, and you have wood. So these are all, but you realize that the colors are rather different. So now let me ask all of you a question. Why are these colors different? Why are these colors different?
Arrangement of an atoms.
I don't know. May not be the case. Okay. So let us do one more job. I'll make this question more complicated. You touch gold, you go touch copper, you touch silver, and you touch wood. Which is cold and which is warm?
Wood is warm.
Warm. And what about the coldness?
I think silver, sir.
Silver. It turns out no, even rather gold is quite cold. Okay? So it doesn't matter. We learn that there are it's somehow colors are different, and one object is more colder than the other. Can you tell me why?
Different materials have different properties.
Somehow the internal atomic structure may be different, and it turns out really that's not the key answer. Something else is there. Any other speculation? So rather, you have answer in my talk. Okay, so that is something which we have to look into. The next thing that I have to understand is these three people here. Let's try to talk to these three people. Who is this person? What is this? What is this?
Diamond.
What is this one?
Ruby.
So it is quartz. Okay. So what is it? It is basically quartz. Now let me ask you, what is this one? What is this one?
So is it Buckminster Fuligine?
Any idea? So the answer is
Is it Ruby? Ruby?
no, it's garnet. It is basically garnet. Okay. So, or in common language, or in Kannada, it is called Gomedha. Okay. So it looks like the blood of cow. So that's how you call it as the color is like blood of cow. So that's why it is Gomedha. Okay. So that's great. Now let me come here. What is this person?
Emerald.
Yes, that's very true. So we have we what we call it in Canada. Any idea? Pardon. I could not hear clearly. Pache, right? Okay. So we learned that this is emerald. Okay. So now let me ask you a question. Why emerald is emerald? Why garnet is garnet? Why quartz is quartz? It turns out all these things are quartz somehow. Okay. But you observe that one of these is transparent, the other has a different color, and the last guy has much a different color all the way together. So why does that happen? What is the answer?
Arrangement of atoms.
That is something very true, but is there anything more precise than that? Arrangement of atoms, agreed. Anything more precise which gives emerald the emeraldic color, or it gives me this garnet, a garnet-like color? No.
Absorption of light, sir.
Yes, please.
Absorption of light, sir.
No. Why absorption of light has to change in these people?
It means it emits a different wavelength, sir. That's why change in color.
Wavelengths, or why does it absorb different wavelengths? So the answer is more simple. It turns out it has something special. All these three people are different in a particular element, or rather impurity. Okay, so impurity here is something else, impurity here is something else, and this guy has no impurity. Okay, so that's where you will see that the change of impurity gives me this difference. So it's the same situation here. So you see gold to be golden, copper to be copper, silver to be silver, because there is a very special entity called electron density. So the electron density in copper is something else, gold is something else, silver is something else, and in wood it is something else. So rather, to be little precise, the free electron densities are different. So that makes these changes. So now let me come to one more situation. Do you see all these objects? What are these here? What are these here? You observe so many objects, right?
Semiconductor devices.
Semiconductor devices. Lot of semiconductor devices out there, and they are basically devices. Can you tell me what are devices? So to make it more precise, in Kannada, salakaranagalu. What is the job of a device? What's the job of a device?
An instrument which can operate a flow of electrons or a charged particle.
That's an electronic device. Tell me, what is a device? What is a salakaranagalu?
Human effort.
Yes, please.
It's reduce the human effort and choose the more complex work.
Great. that object shall be called as a device. And you have basically these electronic devices, as you rightly pointed out, as somebody rightly pointed out, they are, doing a particular job. Flow of the electrons. Okay, so that's the basic game. Now, how are you making them a device? Like why these semiconductors have turned into useful objects? Why are they Salakarana now? Why are they reducing human efforts? So again, the answer is condensed matter physics. Okay, so may it be color of gold, may it be the structure of emerald, structure of garnet or quartz, the answer lies in the subject of condensed matter physics. Now let me come to this situation. I'll ask you a simple question. What is the toughest experiment ever done in physics? In your physics lab, which is the toughest experiment you have done? Okay, let me remodify my question. What is the easiest experiment you have ever done? Yes, please.
Darkroom experiment in my BS.
Dark experiments are the easiest ones? I don't think so. What is the easiest experiment without any efforts? If you have done any experiment? Okay, that's very tricky answer. You are right, actually. But somehow, let us come to something like BSc third year. In that, what is the, or in second year PUC, what is the easiest experiment? Not first year.
Simple pendulum.
The simple pendulum was there in first year, not in second year. Right? So, that's out the answer. Okay. So the answer is Ohm's law experiment. So somehow you learn that you just, and you are able to change the battery potential.
Kindly mute your.
Right? So you realize that you have verified Ohm's law. Now let me ask you, there are four curves here, rather three curves here. What are these three curves? What is this one? Can anybody identify? This is Ohm's law experiment. All of it is Ohm's law. Easiest experiment in physics. So it turns out this is metal. Now let me come here. What is this one? Yes, please.
Semiconductor.
Yes, very true. Yes. Now let me come here. What is this one?
Superconductor.
Superconductor.
Now let me ask you, what is the toughest experiment?
Sir, please kindly mute your audio.
Yes, please. The toughest experiment is also Ohm's law experiment. Okay, so that is very strange. Even if you feel that the easiest experiment is Ohm's law, the toughest experiment is also Ohm's law. Okay, so now let me ask you a better question. What is this one? What do you observe here? What do you observe here?
A magnet.
Magnet.
What kind of magnet is this? Did you see this object anytime at your home or somewhere around on the roads? This is Fe3O4 or magnetite. This is Fe3O4 or magnetite. And it turns out it is the most toughest solid ever understood. Okay, so it turns out it is not yet understood very well. Okay, and we observe these kind of stones becoming magnetic, or rather they attract few metals or few oxides. That is something very strange. Why do they attract? Why are they as they are? So the answer is again straightforward. the answer is condensed matter physics. Okay, so it is basically the way the electrons inside are, and they are rather responsible for making a solid magnet. Okay, so that's wonderful. So we rather know that if you go to physics, you have atomic physics, you have molecular physics, you have whatnot, optics, all other fields. Okay, so now why do I bother about condensed matter physics? So why do I bother about condensed matter physics? Let me ask you, what is condensed matter physics? And I will not be answering that question, by the way. Rather, you will explore and understand it yourself. What is condensed matter physics? And why do you do condensed matter physics? Any answer?
It is the field of physics.
It is the field of?
Physics.
I cannot hear the last sentence.
It is the field of physics.
It is the field of physics. Agreed, yes. But
Where microscopic and macroscopic level of the things are studied.
I don't think so. So let me try to do the job. So it turns out, let me tell you, why do we learn physics, or why do we learn condensed matter physics? So the answer is somewhere here on the screen. Can you recognize these people? Do you recognize? Famous? Why are they famous? So the answer is they did win Nobel Prize in physics. Okay, so that is in 2016 they did win Nobel Prize in physics. So if you look at Nobel Prize in science in general, may it be chemistry, physics, or biology, who are the highest number of people who won Nobel Prizes? May it be physics, chemistry, or biology, or medicine. So who are the people who won highest number of Nobel Prizes? So they are all physicists. So that is something very great, right? So they are maximum of physics people who have won Nobel Prizes in different fields. Okay. So now the question is, who are the people who won highest number of Nobel Prizes in physics? Who are the people? And the answer is again straightforward. It is condensed matter physics. May it be theoretical condensed matter physics or experimental condensed matter physics. These are the people who did win the highest number of Nobel Prizes. And that too, especially the laboratory like Cavendish Laboratory in Cambridge, turns out to be the one which has won around 21 Nobel, rather now 23 Nobel Prizes of in physics. Okay, so that is something very, very strange and interesting. So now, if all of you want to win Nobel Prize in physics, what is the subject to study? So why should you study? Yes, please.
Condensed matter.
Yes, that's correct. So you are supposed to study condensed matter physics. So that's the whole aim, right? So to get condensed, get Nobel Prize, I need to study condensed matter physics. So that's wonderful. So now let us try to understand what is condensed matter physics. So that is something which we need to do. Okay. So now what I do is I write Sham here. So Sham, please pardon me for drawing you like this. So I have Sham here. Now, Sham, I ask you a very simple question. Who are you? Sham, are you there online?
Yes, sir, I'm there. I don't have a suitable answer for that.
Oh, why? You should give me an answer.
I am an animal.
Okay, that's wonderful. Go next. You identify Sham.
Sham is a physics professor at CS Bembalagi Degree College.
Wonderful, wonderful. Go ahead next. So he is learned in physics. He is an
Yes, sir.
enthusiast. Yeah, that's wonderful. Now what I do is I will put you in Mumbai railway station. I take you and
Okay,
put
sir.
you in somewhere here.
Okay.
Okay. And at
Okay, sir.
certain point somewhere here, there is Shah Rukh Khan coming. Okay. So in this point, Shah Rukh Khan comes. Now what is the situation? What will happen in Mumbai railway station?
No,
What will happen?
there is a disturbance.
Yes, there is a huge disturbance produced, and everybody runs towards Shah Rukh Khan, right?
Yes, sir.
So that's
Yes.
going to. Now I come with a mic and ask you, Sham, who are you? What will you answer? Now,
I am a common man.
no, you cannot answer at all because you are running, right? Because
Yes, yes, sir.
everybody is running towards Shah Rukh Khan. So even whether you like Shah Rukh Khan or not, you will run towards Shah Rukh Khan, right?
Yes, sir.
Correct? Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Sham. Thank you. So now what we learn is it is the same situation which happens to electrons. So I take an electron. I ask electron, dear electron, who are you? So the electron tells me that I am described by a function called a wave function. Okay, whether you are exposed to quantum mechanics or not doesn't matter. What is this wave function telling me is its name, its property, everything is listed in this something called psi. Okay, so now it tells me that I have spin and it has up spin as well as down spin. So you have two species of electrons. Okay, so it has all the properties. What is the property of an electron, or what is the charge of an electron? Let me ask. Negative, but what is the amount? How much charge an electron has?
1.6 10 to the power minus 19 coulomb.
1.6 into 10 to the power minus 19. That's great. So now what I do is, this is like Sham answering who is he. Now what I do is, instead of
1.6 into 10 to the power minus 19.
Yes, yes, that is great. That is great. So now what I do is I take these electrons and put them amongst 10 to the power 23 electrons. What is this 10 to the power 23? Avogadro number. So I put these electrons of the order of Avogadro number, and I put them in a very small space, preferably few nanometers. Okay, so I pack them very close, and now when I apply a voltage, somehow it turns out something strange happens. Like Sham lost its identity, electrons also will lose its identity or the wave function. Okay, and you generate a new wave function, which is this psi solid. And now if I ask electron what is its charge, what will be the answer? So many electrons are there and there is a voltage being applied. So every electron is running towards that voltage or that potential change. What do you expect? What is the charge of the electron?
The same, sir.
No, it will not be same somehow. That is what happens. Okay, so instead of having this 10 to the power 1.6 into 10 to the power minus 19, if not this single electron, the collection of electrons is going to have different charges, and they behave like an independent entity or a quasi-particle. Okay, so that is something very strange. So even though one particle or the electron's charge may be the same, but the cluster of electrons is going to have a different charge, few fractional charges, which may not be even integral multiples of the electronic charge. So these weird kind of properties will start coming when you put many electrons together. Okay, so this is basically a number effect, or it's called mob effect. So I'll call this as number effect. Then there is second quantity. When I bring all the electrons together, you disturb one electron, what happens to the other? It is something like so many people put one after the other. I disturb one person. I disturb him. What do you expect?
Collision is taken place.
Yeah, the others also will get affected. Okay, so the others are also getting disturbed. So the same way, this in physics is called correlation. What is it called? It is called correlation. So we have number and correlation, which actually brings new wave function, or rather new set of properties, and you develop a new wave function which is regulated by this potential. Okay, and this basically is called Bloch's theorem in condensed matter physics. So what makes condensed matter physics a condensed matter physics? What is required? What is required?
Huge number of electrons come together.
Yes, correct. What else is required? What is just number sufficient?
Density.
No, density would rather somehow relate to number only. What is that second quantity which is very, very essential? It is this correlation. Correlation, which is very important. Okay, so we need to remember that number and correlation, and as you rightly pointed out, correlation is somehow reflected in density as well. So you will see that these two makes the solid a solid. Okay, so that's very important. Now let me come to this second situation. I observe here something else. Let me zoom this up. Okay, what do you observe?
Particles.
Particles. What is speciality of all these particles?
Regular arrangement.
Regular arrangement. Wonderful. I come here. What is the difference?
Irregular arrangement.
Random
It is also regular arrangement.
Size of the atoms.
It is also. So the speciality here is you have one order here and there is one more order here. So there are two orders. Okay. So these are basically positional orders. You are changing, or you have developed an order or a relation in position. Okay. So how many orders are there in the first picture? How many orders are there in the second picture? So this is
in first
number
one, second two.
Yes, that's correct. Wonderful. Now I ask you, what about the third one? What about third one?
Placing of particles in regular arrangement.
Electron spin.
So but how many orders are there here now?
Two, sir.
Why are two? So it is like figure 1 only, right?
But orientation is
in
different.
spin states.
Yes,
The
that's
electrons
perfect.
have a spin property.
Yes, perfect. So you have orientations which are different. Okay. So you observe even the position is same, but the orientation is different. So this tells me what is very essential in any solid. What kind of orders are required? Let us write them down. What are the orders that are required? What is the first order?
Position or
Position. Let me write that. Then what is the second kind of order that you observe?
orientation.
Great. So what do we learn is we require positional order as well as orientational order. So it turns out people who understood this rather got Nobel Prize. So that is very strange. It is Professor Shell who actually developed something called neutron scattering, who actually received Nobel Prize in 1994. Okay, and somehow if you want to identify the order in solid, the mathematics that is required is this one. Do you identify this mathematics by any chance? I do not really expect you to know it, but if any of you can identify Fourier transformation, that's wonderful. So you use Fourier transformation selectively, you will realize you will be able to identify the hidden orders in any system. Okay, so that is wonderful. So now what is a solid? Let me ask you, what is a solid? What all solids have got?
Regular arrangement of atoms with strongly bound.
Let us not call them regular arrangement, but
There
they
is
have
no intermolecular force.
Yes, please.
There is no intermolecular force.
We don't know. We don't know of those things. But in general, we learn is there is order, which is positional as well as orientational. There can be interatomic bondage or interatomic forces. We do not really bother about it. It is the question of detail. Okay, so we require a solid to be oriented or ordered in terms of position as well as orientation. Similarly, I have a correlation, that is this kind of a thing, which is basically like in one of the ways you can write them as some sort of a time average. Okay, so it is correlation. Okay, at the end of the day, you require these two things to be existing. Meanwhile, if you want to make an ordered solid, then you require this equation to exist. So what is this equation? Any idea? Or what is this symmetry?
Periodic function.
A periodic function. That is a great thought. Okay, so it is one of the requirements. It's not the only requirement which makes a condensed system. So condensed system is always characterized by n and this average t, that is number and correlation. And what is essentially required is positional ordering and orientational ordering, which are optional in the system. That is something, it's the generalized definition of condensed system, not of solids alone. Please remember, condensed matter covers this n, p, and solids are a particular case which have positional ordering and orientational ordering with them. Okay, and people who have positional ordering, which don't have positional ordering but only orientational ordering. Can you guess such kind of materials or solids which know what is the direction of orientation but no positional ordering? Can you guess any solid like that which you have come across in your day-to-day life and which you are actually holding in your hand now? That kind of solid, or which is in front of you? What is it?
Glass?
No. What are you holding in front of you? It turns out it is the liquid crystal. Okay, the LCD is an example. So yet I believe we don't have LED based phones also. They are all backlight LEDs, LED screens. As of now also we have basically these LCDs which are having orientational ordering but not positional ordering. And this order was actually developed in the form of a mathematics, and that mathematics was built by this great person named Bravais. Okay, somewhere in 1850s, who really understood these ideas better. Okay, so he's sort of father of understanding this order. Okay, can anybody tell me what is the mathematics that he contributed towards? What did Bravais contribute? Any idea? So it turns out, yeah, please, any answer? Any answer? So the answer is straightforward. He contributed to group theory, so which you study in mathematics. So he developed something called symmetry function, and based on that symmetry function, he could really make people realize that in the whole world, if there has to be order, order shall be only of this kind. Okay, they are categorized into 7 parts, and it turns out the whole world only obeys a better mathematics proposed by Bravais. Okay, so that means what is the job of God, like if at all you believe in him? What is the job of God? Like, since God made all this world, if you believe so, what was the profession of God? Who obeyed Bravais also, like whose work was understood by Bravais?
Creator. God is a creator.
Okay.
To create objects, substances based only on this structures.
The answer is wrong. He was a mathematician. Okay, so God is a very good mathematician, and he learned very advanced group theory and created whole world. Okay, so that's the simplest idea. So why? Because you see that every creation around follows a particular kind of group theory at the end of the day. Okay, so that's why what is the profession of Almighty? It is being a wonderful mathematician. Okay, so that's the game. So whenever you make solids, you require basically these designs, or you call them as lattice. So what is this? This is mathematical. And what I have next is basically these objects. So I can actually put myself here, or I can put Sham, or I can put somebody else. So what do we learn is, on this mathematical arrangement, the atoms or cluster of atoms, which are basically called motifs. So they are called motifs. Can anybody tell me what is the meaning of motif in English? What is the meaning of motif? Not motive. Motif means design. Okay, so motif basically means some sort of a design. A set of designs is actually put on this mathematical structure to create basically a solid. Okay, so that's how we interpret the understanding of solids. Okay, so what is the difference between regular systems and these solids? They have basically a lattice or a mathematical structure on which the actual design of atoms is put on. Okay, so they have positional ordering and sometimes orientational ordering also. So this orientational ordering rather produces a lot of exotic magnetism. Okay, so a lot of magnetism is coming out of just simple orientational order. So now I come to much special kind of an idea. Now what I do is I make all the electrons put into the solid. What is the best model to model this all electrons which are put, as we learned earlier, like Mumbai railway station, but bound Mumbai railway station. Okay, all the walls are closed. So what is the best model to understand? Any idea in physics? So I put all the electrons who are 10 to the power 23 and I put them in enclosure. And what is the best model to understand? Such, pardon?
Watermelon.
Watermelon, no. What did we study in BSc 1 classes?
Potential well. Potential well.
That is a very good example, or rather kinetic theory of gases. You take gas in an enclosed box, okay, or a free electron gas in a box, or in simple, a potential well. Okay, so its eigenvalues, or the way the electrons will get arranged themselves probabilistically, is going to look basically like this. Okay, so the electrons are going to arrange based on this equation, where this K is the momentum of electrons and this is the energy of electron. So what is this equation? I will write this as y is equal to ax squared. What is this? What is this equation?
Parabola.
Parabola. Perfect. Wonderful. So you have an equation for parabola. So it turns out the electrons which are there into a well basically follow this relation, and somehow it turns out if you write this as Kf, or a particular occupancy, and you can create a sphere here into the K space or in the momentum space, and that is called Fermi surface or Fermi sphere. So the electron's energy is going to look as if it's a parabolic energy, and if you see in the momentum space, you will observe that they are going to look like a sphere. Why they look like a sphere? Why momentum cannot exceed kf? What is the essential condition? Can you guess? The electrons were, free, right? They had whims and fancy of their own. They could have got any kind of momentum. Why they should get constrained? What makes them get limited in momentum? If you can see this and tell me, what makes them have limited momentum?
Potential?
No. They don't experience any potential as such because they are in a well, they are free particle, happy go people. What makes them have a limited momentum? So the answer is straightforward. It is that length boundary, okay? So you change the boundary, you change the momentum. That is something which you need to remember. If I change the size of the box, the momentum limit will change. So you give a big box, momentum is going to be different. You give a small box, the momentum is going to be different. So you can always translate between length and momentum. That is what is the beauty of quantum mechanics, okay? So you can always go from length to momentum, momentum to length. And which mathematics takes you from length to momentum, momentum to length?
Fourier transform.
That's wonderful. And that is condensed matter physics, okay? So you will see that all of condensed matter physics is just Fourier transforms, okay? So that's the beauty here. So you observe that the electrons are arranged themselves in the energy ladder like a parabola. Now I do one more job. I apply some magnetic field, okay? So when I apply a magnetic field, what do you expect the electron's energy to be? Can you guess? Like a simple electron beam, I have an electron beam, I apply a magnet. I apply some magnetic field. What happens to the electron beam? This we have studied in 12th standard.
They will deviate their path in two portions.
Perfect, perfect. So you will observe the capacity of magnetic field is always to change the path. Now I do one more job. Instead of magnetic field, I apply electric field. What do you expect? So to make the job simple, I will apply electric field like this.
Mobility, sir.
Make it simpler, please. It will
Drifting
repel.
of
It is repelled.
Drifting of electrons.
Drifting of electrons. Now make it more simpler. More simpler. Electrons will accelerate. Okay. So they drift, they have mobility. What does it mean? There is some sort of an acceleration produced. So B field bends, E field accelerates. This is something which we need to remember. The magnetic field always deviates the charge and the electric field always accelerates the charge. So that is what it does. Now let me ask, if I produce a magnetic field inside a solid, what do you expect? So if I have an electron beam, what did B field do? What did magnetic field do? It orientation changes. Now what did it do in a solid now?
It will align all the electrons in its direction.
No, it is for a single electron. Now you have so many people, 10 to the power 23. What is it do?
It will exert torque.
No, it will split them into two categories. Okay.
Vibration of electrons in its mean position.
No, it just makes them to go apart. Okay. And they go apart by something called spin degree of freedom. So you will see that upspin electrons go to one energy state, downspin electrons go to another energy state, and like a Zeeman effect, there is splitting here. Okay, so like you observe in Zeeman effect, the energy levels split, the same way the electron energies inside the solid will split down. Okay, so that is what was observed by this wonderful person. Do you identify this person? Do you identify this person? He is Dirac. Okay, so Dirac actually understood this idea. So now when I make the electrons move in a free solid, I do a special job. I bring these small ions in between. Now what do you expect? What happens to the flow of electrons? If I make so many bumpy bottoms, instead of you had plain bottom here, now this your potential well was plain bottom. Now I make it a bumpy bottom. What do you expect? What will electron do? Electron will actually hop. It will also start jumping. So you will see if your bump is larger, it will hop with more energy. And if the bump is smaller, it will actually hop with less energy. And that will happen to only these electrons which are very near to Fermi surface. And if you are much above, it really doesn't see these people at all. Okay, so based on where are the electrons will start hopping in the solid. That's what you observe. Now I do a simple job of perturbing these electrons or disturbing them. So if I disturb down, this is the disturbance equation. Okay, so don't worry about what it is. If you disturb the electrons, or sometimes it's called Drude's equation or so, or it's basically a damped simple harmonic oscillator. Okay, so that is what it is. You disturb the electrons. Now, when you disturb the electrons, something more is going to happen. So I did produce the electrons to go on this path, and I will produce the disturbance in such a way that I produce the electrons to go on this path. What do you expect the change? So what is the difference between these two pictures? What is the difference between these two pictures? Only two pictures. Don't worry about the third one. Third one is very complicated. What is the difference between these two pictures? So what do we observe is this is a positive curvature, whereas this is negative curvature. Okay, so it turns out these equations tell me that the electrons which travel on the positive curvature become more heavier, whereas who travels on the negative curvature, along with becoming heavy, it changes the sign. So now what will electron behave like if it travels onto this curvature, and what will electron behave like if it travels on this curvature? What do you expect? So this behaves like electron has basically a negative charge. And here the electron behaves, it's the same electron, but behaves as if it is having positive charge. Okay, so now the electron will behave as if having positive or negative charge based on what property in the same solid? What is that decides the charge or apparent charge? What decides the apparent charge?
The path it goes on.
The path. And what is it? What is that geometrically? What is the difference in these geometries?
Curvature, positive curvature.
That is wonderful. You are right. So the change of curvature will make sure that the apparent charge of the electrons will rather change. So now something very strange that is going to happen. It is this guy, which is very complicated. Okay, so we really don't go into this, the last one, which is basically a toroidal system, and there the behavior of charges is going to become something very strange. Okay, and the charge of the electron is usually understood in terms of something called Hall effect, and you will see that the Hall coefficient for these people are going to be one time negative and the other time positive, even though it is just electron. Okay, so that is something very strange. Now I come to the next situation. Can you identify these people? Can you identify these people? It is written over here. Let me, what is this? So it turns out it is gold only. So you have gold of different colors. Or this is cadmium selenide, a semiconductor of different colors. What do you expect? Why you get color into any solid? Why gold is gold, white silver is silver? What was the answer that we gave? What was the answer? Why gold is golden color? Why silver is silver color?
Nature of the atoms?
No. We gave the answer.
Electronic configuration, sir.
Just electron configuration, that's all? No. You can see this equation and answer also. So what you observe?
Current density.
No. You observe this one? It is the electron density. You change the electron density, the color of metal will rather change. So you will observe gold has certain electron density. That's why it is golden in color. You reduce the size of gold, your electron density will change and gold becomes, purple in color, or it becomes pinkish in color. Okay. So based on electron density, the absorption of the electromagnetic radiation is going to change. Okay. So that is what we observe. And one of the frontiers, which is because of this modification, is here in this equation also. What do you observe in this equation? The equation number 1, the permittivity is also a function of electron density. So it turns out there was a very nice paper which came sometimes in 2016, which said I can make glass, and the glass is going to be conducting glass, and it can change the color based on the temperature. Okay, so something very strange. It is transparent. So the object's transparency or object's blockage or coloring is a sheer function of electron density. Okay, so that is something very important. Next, let me try to come to this wonderful man over here. Can you identify this person? Who is this person? Again, a Cavendish contribution, Cavendish Laboratory, Cambridge contribution. Who is this person? So he is Kamerlingh Onnes, who actually identified something like this. Do you know this plot? So it turns out, yes. So you have superconductors, right? So these are basically superconductors, which have typically a very, very low value of resistance. So recently, it turns out, based on this quasi-particle approach, which we studied previously, the electron density change, a new experiment which came in 2020, which is having a few halides, which are basically organic halides or inorganic halides, under a very large pressure, produce superconductivity, that too at room temperature. Can you identify these two people? Who are these two people who are pressing this single crystal? Who are these two people? What is this? What are these two edges? So it is diamond. Okay. So it is diamond. Under the very high pressure diamond, it turns out you actually can produce superconductivity at room temperature. I believe I'm connected and audible, right? Am I audible?
Yes, sir, you are audible.
Okay.
Perfectly audible, sir.
Wonderful. If I don't hear anything from you, I get tensed rather. Thank you. Thank you, Shyam. So now what do we learn is we have solids which at very high pressure produce superconductivity rather very near to even room temperature. Okay. The same situation is here also. This is something which has come from India. So it turns out this is silver and gold. These are nanoparticles which are very small in size, which when produced in a particular pattern or particular way, they produce superconductivity nearly at room temperature. Okay, and this whole field is basically called granular superconductivity, or it's something sometimes called mesoscopic superconductivity. Okay, so which allows you to rather have superconductivity at very high temperatures, for which there is no really a very well-defined theory yet. Okay, so that is very interesting. Now let me come to this situation. Can you identify this? Can you identify this? So this is a class. Yes, please. Yes, please. Who are these people?
Bees.
They are just, they are not bees, rather. They are these small hummingbirds, small birds which always travel in cluster. Okay, and this is the same tendency for these bees also, which actually attack onto the fields as well. But these are the ones which are small sized birds. Okay, and they behave as if they have their own mind. So such materials which behave as if they have their own mind are called active matter. Okay, so when they actually are arranged in a particular electron density, or they are arranged in a particular energy configuration, they will start self-assembling themselves. They arrange themselves in a particular way, and they have their own cognition, their own mind. So it turns out this is one more field of expertise which condensed matter is presently looking at. So what is the answer that condensed matter asks? What is life, basically? Okay, so we are really asking what is making life alive, or what makes mind cognitive in nature. So even biology at the end of the day turns into physics. And what physics? Basically condensed matter physics. So this is one more frontier which people are trying to understand. The last frontier which I'm trying to ask, or rather show you, is one of the areas where I work. So I work in something called spintronics. So it is again electronics, as somebody rightly pointed out. You have devices which work on charge and current, but I work on devices which are basically dependent on spin. So now let me come to this situation. Can somebody identify what is this plot? What is this plot? What is this plot? Can somebody identify? So one axis is time. There is something over here written. It is basically magnetization, and it is a switch which switches on and off. So it is a magnetic switch which is controlled using electric field. So that is something very interesting. So these are electromagnetic switches which actually can be controlled by magnetic field as well as electric field. So that is something very strange. And these kind of devices are going to be the future of device physics. Okay, and what do we observe, or what do we expect with such devices or such switches? Let us ask this person. Do you observe this person? Do you identify him?
Sundar Pichai.
Yes, wonderful. You are right. And he is Google's CEO. And why is he in this picture? Any idea what is next to his picture? What is next to his picture? So the answer is
Quantum computer.
A quantum computer. That's correct. So you have a spintronic device here in a dilution refrigerator which goes to few millikelvins, and it turns out it will be in a position to go to these many states. So classically a switch will get on and off, but you can actually go between this on and off conditions in these quantum computers. So in a way you can actually produce lot of bits out of it, a lot of stable states out of it, and make computing. So this is going to be the new area of research in condensed matter physics. So now let me come to the last part which I have to introduce you all to, that is this guy. Can you identify these spins? Where are they traveling? Any idea? So this is just a small cube. So a cube has this kind of an electron spin and it is traveling like this. And you have another electron, which is down electron, which is traveling like this. Can you identify the solid? What is that solid? So the answer is straightforward. It is a topological solid, the one which you saw in the very last picture of ours. So it is the solid which has a Fermi surface of a weird nature. Okay, so they actually are insulators at the depth, but they are conducting on the surface. Their conductivity is only on the surface, and if you pass up spin electrons, they travel relentlessly, and if you pass down spin electrons, they travel relentlessly. So these are few frontiers which I have brought to you. And the future of research in condensed matter is not going to be just condensed matter. You have to know biology, you have to know information science, you have to know rather cognitive science as well as low dimensional physics, that is nanoscience. So if you bring all of them together, that will steer the frontier of condensed matter physics. So do you identify me here by any chance? Where is Rajiv? Where is Rajiv? Can you identify Rajiv? Number 1, number 2, number 3, or number 4? 1, 2, 3, 4. Let me mark them. 1, 2, 3, 4. Which is Rajiv?
3.
So answer is wrong. You have to find the fattest person. Okay, so that is number 4. So somehow it turns out if you want to be like this, that is, an astronaut on the Earth, what subject to study? What subject to study to be astronaut on the Earth?
Astronomy.
No, condensed matter physics. Study condensed matter physics. Okay, if you study condensed matter physics, you can be an astronaut on the Earth itself. Okay, so that is something very interesting. So I request all of you to be enthusiastic in learning this field of science, and science is always interesting, and it is more interesting when you do research in it. Okay, why to do research? So the answer is very straightforward: to be young. Okay, so if you want to be happy, you want to be young and be beyond the human suffering on the Earth, then the best way is to explore research activities. So they allow you to rather be somebody who is always happy. So these are few small references for you to learn about condensed matter physics. So with this, I close my talk today. So thank you one and all. Sham, I'm done.
Thank you, sir.
I can take questions.
Thank you very much for such a wonderful talk on condensed matter physics and its frontiers. I request participants, if you have any doubts, sir is ready to take your questions. Sir is actually happy to take your question.
I'll be really happy to talk to you all, please. If I don't know, I will absolutely identify and tell you. But it's always great to have valuable questions. So please, if you have anything that to ask Indra, please do so.
Sir, I have a doubt.
Yes, please go ahead.
Sir, actually, I've heard about cryogeny. So I just wanted to know that is cryogeny a part of condensed matter physics?
Indeed. Let me just try to tell you what is cryogenics, so that is more easier. So somehow this field became a different field, okay? So the reason is, in very simple terms, cryogenics is basically study of low temperature. So now the question is, what is low? So can I say that -1 degree centigrade is low, or -2 degree centigrade is low, or -3 degree centigrade is low? I don't know. So this is something which we really ask a question: what is low temperature? So the answer is around 123 Kelvin. So let me talk in terms of Kelvin. It is easier for a scientist to talk in terms of Kelvin. So at 123 Kelvin, oxygen basically liquefies. Okay, so it is the first gas to get liquefied, and it is this temperature which is called cryogenic temperature. So any study, like very technically to say so, any study which is done at temperature less than 123 Kelvin is basically called cryogenics. Okay, or otherwise for a common man, cryogenics is basically just any study done at lower temperature. Okay, so but technically it's 123 Kelvin, that is the liquefying temperature of oxygen, becomes the boundary. And yes, is it part of condensed matter study? Answer is yes, just because it turns out it is at this point where the particles come closer, there is very huge condensation taking place, and because of this condensation, the particle gets its own mind, or the atoms get its own mind, their physical properties start changing. So because of the collective behavior, if properties change, then they are part of condensed matter physics. So that's the game here also. So in simple, cryogenics is part of condensed matter physics.
Okay, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
Sir, another one question shall I ask, sir?
Yes, please. Please go ahead.
What are the, sir, technological scope of this subject, sir?
A lot. Every technology you take, like whatever technology you have today, may it be any part of any different section of engineering, what you have to work with is materials, and the whole realm of material physics is part of condensed matter physics. Okay, so that's the beauty. And may it be even astrophysics, which is done at higher densities, is part of condensed matter physics. So condensed matter physics is a very generalized realm. So you have rather any technology which you observe today involving materials is part of condensed matter physics, and that's the technological scope that remains technological scope. Or if you want anything specific, that is also fine.
Sir, your number will you display on the screen so that we can ask the questions, sir, wherever we need?
Yeah. Just a minute. If you have any other doubt, please let me ask. So while concluding, I'll make sure that I give you a proper invitation with contacts.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions?
Hello, sir.
Yes, please go ahead.
Sir, I just wanted to know what is the scope for spintronics. Just now I had told we have so many stable states between 0 and 1 bit, that is switch on and off. Like that, any other specific applications or things about spintronics?
A lot of them. So because this is going to be a future technology, so there are other electronics also which have come in device physics, maybe photonics, or many a times you observe these dielectronics, like which is based on polaronic configurations and so on, which are part of the new electronic regime. Like that, spintronics also is a part where the spin degree of freedom is accounted. Just not these multiple stable state devices, that's the only scope. There are many of them. One is basically called magnonics, which is based on spin waves. So a very new field which uses all the optics concepts and then tries to work with spin waves rather than regular electron waves or so. Okay, so that's the one major branch of spin-based electronics. Then you have passive spintronics. So passive spintronics is very extraordinarily used in engineering applications. like your mobile technology or sensor development. This passive spintronics is developing capacitors, inductors, which are based on spins. That's one full realm all the way together. And then you have memory technology, which is basically developing these stable states and so on. So these are the three basic areas, that is passive spintronics, magnonics, and memory-based spintronics or stable state electronics. These are three basic realms. There is one more field called active spintronics, active state spintronics, which uses these transistor, field effect transistor kind of devices, develops field effect transistor kind of devices that you actually observe in your computers today. It's like you see something called MRAM, which is basically in your hard disk, which stores all the memories, all the information. So that's one of the active state spintronics. So basically, it is divided into these 5 big categories of devices. Okay, so it's part of device physics, just not the memory technology. Other than these memory technologies, these are all areas which are actually very much usefully developable in in spin-based electronics. Okay, so if you want me to relist, I will relist them. May it be active state spintronics, passive state spintronics, magnonics, and the
Memory technology.
memory-based systems. Okay, so
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Sir, actually, I have one question which is not relevant to this webinar. Could you please tell me the procedure of, I mean to say, how do we take our students to visit the Central University laboratories?
As of now, let me just try to tell you, as we are all aware, we are a 10-year-old institution. We have limited advanced physics facilities. So that's what I want to confess in the beginning. You will be able to see 2 laboratories in physics, 2 laboratories in physics and 1 laboratory in chemistry. So that's the present situation. And hopefully we will be in a position to expand it within next 6 months. You are supposed to write to our PRO or registrar, or you can write to any of us personally, and then we will try to arrange a visit for all of you. Is that okay?
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Yeah. With this, I would like to seek your pardon. I have a meeting at 11:30.
Sure, sir. Sure.
Take your leave.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much for cherishing our day and this. What? Yes, sir. Please.
I will write my number before I forget. It is 94828643788. It's Rajiv Joshi. So any of you please needing, be happy to contact me at any point of time. Just don't worry. Sham, thank you. Thanks indeed. Is it fine?
Pleasure is mine, sir. Thank you. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you all. Thank you.
Sir,
all.
may I ask one question? Sir, are you there?
So I'm sorry, sir. Unfortunately, I have a meeting at 11:30. Kindly.
Okay, sir. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you all. I thank the principal once again. Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, sir. Now we have come to the end of the session. I request Professor S.M. Sakri sir to conclude this function by saying word of thanks. Over to you, sir.
It is my privilege to propose a vote of thanks on this occasion. First of all, on behalf of our management, colleagues, and the Department of Physics and the students, I extend sincere gratitude to today's resource person, Dr. Rajiv S. Joshi, sir. Thank you very much, sir. I extend heartfelt thanks to our principal, Professor Dr. Srimati R.S. Udugnaur, madam. Thank you, ma'am. I also thank all the participants for their active response. Finally, I thank Professor S. Samesh sir and his team for successful organization of this webinar. And also I thank all the participants once again, and thank you one and all. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. I would like to thank everyone who made this meeting possible and successfully. I thank today's guest, Dr. Rajiv Joshi, sir. Thank you, one and all.
One more request.
Well done, Shamil sir.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Participants, still you have any doubts, drop it in the chat box. We will try to convey the Dr. Rajiv Joshi, sir. And one more important thing, feedback link is also available in the chat box. And kindly request to fill it.
Thank you everyone thank you once again for attending this webinar. Thank you all.